Hi, everyone, and thank you for stopping in to learn a little bit about mindfulness-based stress reduction to treat trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder onset by abuse in the context of family relationships. I'm Jeremy Henderson Tillexing, and I'll be your presenter today. So you know who is presenting. Here's a little bit about me and my counseling practice. I primarily treat trauma and related conditions, in addition to being a doctoral student at the Cummings Graduate Institute for Behavioral Studies. I'm also a board-certified counselor. Close, warm, and supportive families promote healthy functioning. In these families, children are more resilient. They express fewer behavioral symptoms and learn to buffer stress better. Emotional regulation is also stronger, and coping skills tend to be learned through the family to manage life stressors. Healthy family functioning provides many benefits to everyone involved. However, abuse in the context of the family is often complicated. Even the language we use to talk about abuse can get confusing and uncomfortable. So let's spell out the types of abuse that happen in the context of family relationships. Domestic abuse or domestic violence is an umbrella term that's used to indicate harm in a home by or between members of a family unit, such as parents, children, siblings, and roommates. Sibling abuse is a term that's used to describe, again, harm by or between siblings during childhood and into adulthood. Spousal or partner abuse is used to indicate harm by or between current or previous romantic partners. Child abuse is used to indicate harm to a minor child by a parent or custodial caregiver. Parent abuse, now this is also called child-to-parent violence in the literature, and this is used to indicate harm to parents or custodial caregivers by their minor children. Elder abuse is an abuse specifier to indicate harm to an adult who is 60 years or older by a caregiver or trusted person. So in the context of family, this is typically their children or grandchildren. Now, what's important to recognize is the direction of abuse in regard to the family hierarchy. What gets most of our attention is child abuse, and that is the only relationship specifier listed here that is descending, whereas the others are either unilateral or bi-directional or are ascending. To make abuse even more complex is the types of abuse that exist in the context of these family relationships. Now, the reality is that any of these abuse types can happen in the context of a family relationship. Physical abuse involves the perpetrator's power and control of the victim's body through actual or threatened physical harm and can often take the form of hitting, scratching, punching, forced restraint, and the like. Emotional abuse involves the perpetrator's power and control of the victim's self-worth and emotional regulation, and this can come through name calling, sustained harmful verbalizations, insults, belittling, gaslighting. Psychological abuse involves the perpetrator's power and control over the victim's psychological safety and can take the form of intimidation and threats. These can be targeted at family or friends or even themselves, harming pets, isolation from friends, and more. Sexual abuse involves the perpetrator's power and control over the victim's right to consent to sexual activity, and we could see this taking the form of coercion, rape, aggression, ignoring feelings about sexual interaction or shaming someone sexually. This can also include forcing reproductive health choices or even inviting unwelcomed others to participate sexually. Financial abuse involves the perpetrator's power and control over the victim's financial security and autonomy, and that can look like spending or savings control, withholding access to money or credit, power of attorney exploitation, stealing or using unapproved funds. This can even look like irresponsible physical guardianship or conservatorship irresponsibility. Technical abuse, now this is also called digital abuse, and this involves the perpetrator's power and control of the victim's use of technology and digital safety. And this can take the form of emotional abuse online, harassing and bullying someone online, mobile stalking or mobile tracking, requiring real-time responses and password sharing, monitoring the use of the internet, social media, email, text, mobile devices, and more. So, abuse is a public health problem, and the core of each of the abuse types that we talked about is power and control, the perpetrator's power and control over the victim. So, here you can see various types of abuse that we discussed and stats that are associated with them. But what connects all of them is this idea or this concept that the victim is being controlled by the perpetrator who has the power. That power and control in the context of family impairs health. So there are a number of known health conditions that result from the experience of stress. And when someone is being abused, we know that their stress increases to the point that they could experience something like post traumatic stress disorder, as listed here. In other words, after the trauma, the person is experiencing stress. We know that abuse in the context of family relationships is considered traumatic. So, treatment of stress then becomes incredibly important. And we know that mindfulness can reduce stress. So, it's surprising to note that only about 20% of trauma treatments actually employ mindfulness to treat the stress that is resulting from abuse in the context of family relationships. Now, there are several definitions of mindfulness. You can see a few here, such as open with non judgmental present moment awareness or present moment emotional regulation, willingness to accept painful thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without maladaptive cognitive fusion, while non judgmentally listening to oneself with compassion in the present moment. And this mindfulness can be the first step in establishing resilience and distress tolerance. So, the mindfulness can be used to cope with stress that comes from the experience of being abused. Mindfulness-based stress reduction, then, is a specific program through which participants learn to accept thoughts, feelings, and body sensations without defending against them. Typically, this is delivered in an 8-week session in groups for about 2.5 hours per session. Additionally, there is a daily 45-minute mindfulness practice that participants use at home. Diaphragmatic breathing tends to be the core skill that's used in mindfulness-based stress reduction. The others that are listed here tend to build upon it, so it's an important skill to master. When you're guiding a client or patient through this, what we'd want to do is invite them to close their eyes or rest their eyes gently in front of them. And then we would breathe through the nose for 4 counts, hold that air in the chest for 4 counts, and then push the air out from the diaphragm for 5 or 6 counts. And as we push that air out, sort of like you're blowing out your birthday candles, but just in a more controlled way. We want to repeat that process at least 4 times or until the patient or client experiences a change in their bodies. They may feel their shoulders drop, their chest may become looser. You may even notice that the patient or client is yawning. And when I'm working with folks, I invite them to yawn loud and proud because that is just a great sign that we've turned on the parasympathetic side of the autonomic nervous system. So, indeed, we are helping them move into a relaxed state. So, mindfulness based stress reduction absolutely can be used on its own, as I just described in those 8-week sessions. You could also couple it up with other complementary mindfulness based therapies to enable a patient to move through and process their trauma, such as acceptance and commitment therapy, maybe narrative therapy, or even doing values. If you would like more information about the research that went into the development of this presentation, here are a few references for you. If you have more questions about abuse in the context of families or how to treat this through stress reduction, feel free to reach out to me at Jeremy at indigopathcollective.com. I look forward to hearing from you soon.